Fantastic. You're up.
Thank you, everybody. I'm going to share my screen and I'd like to also welcome some of our other project associates. As Tony said, we have with us Lauren Francesi, Allison Nori, and then later on you'll be meeting Rhonda Elby and Mary Hanna. And our role to date as a project associate has been focusing on the creation of these guiding principles. And as Tony alluded to earlier, to use Tony's words, we kicked off this process early on into the school year, hearing about the process in early October at a Connecticut Council meeting. And then we held our first steering committee meeting in November. And since November, really what our work has been, the work that has been required of us has involved meetings, surveys, discussions, and then the project associate's role was to take all the various inputs received after each of these collections of data, whether it was through a discussion, through the survey, in emails after we presented on certain components, and really synthesize everything into creating this guiding principle document that entails what values are important to us as we're writing the standards process. And so early on in the process in November, one of the things we did at one of our early steering committee meetings was review Connecticut curriculum design principles. We looked at the Washington, D.C. principles that had been created for social studies. And we also heard from other districts in Connecticut who have been doing great work in standards. And we've had a lot of pull-out groups. We've had focus groups, as Tony alluded to, with our project consultants looking at the diversity piece. We've pulled in assistant superintendents to get some of their feedback on how do we translate a written document into action that would happen in the curriculum and the teaching of these standards. And all of that together has led to the guiding principles document, which you can review in its entirety on the website that Tony shared. But for today, we are going to do a brief overview of the guiding principles for you and invite you to share some reflections in a Jamboard and in breakout groups. Our hope for today is to really get some feedback from you all on what challenges you foresee as we write these standards in terms of trying to uphold the importance of these various principles, and then any solutions that you think could help us overcome those challenges. And as I said, we're going to be using a Jamboard. And in case not everybody is familiar with a Jamboard, we'll provide a link for you in the chat when we get to this point. And a Jamboard looks like this. So it's just a board with a whole bunch of sticky notes. And on our Jamboard, we have 6 slides, and we've put down each of the various principles from the guiding principles document. And what we're asking you to do as we go over these is over here on the left, there's a little sticky note icon. And when you click on it, you can pick whatever color you wish. You're going to type your feedback in the box. Helps it, and you can see that my sticky note is here. And so we just thought it was a different tool to utilize to get information. I'm sure everybody is so tired of Google Forms at this point. A lot of us on the Project Associates team know we are inundated by them from our teachers, our students, and of course, our steering committee work. So to save some time with the guiding principles, I'm not going to read through them all in their entirety, but as I go through, I'd like to remind you that our guiding principles are split into 4 different categories. The first one is structure. And we have 3 principles that go with structure that I'll click through as I give you this overview. One of the important pieces with structuring our standards is that they are appropriate, that they're vertically aligned, that they are going to be measurable, and ensure that adequate attention is paid to both our content and our skills. And as Tony mentioned, we will be building upon these social studies frameworks, but the big key is promoting best practice. So as we structure our standards, we hope that they are measurable, vertically aligned, and promoting best practice. We have a large section of our guiding principles focusing on diversity and representation. And these standards, we hope, will help define diverse content that promotes social justice and human rights, that these standards will represent individuals, groups, and communities through inclusive language. We have a National Council for the Social Studies statement that reaffirmed their commitment to the importance of diversity and representation on human rights in particular, stating that the principles and practices of human rights support the universal values of equal justice, democracy, and dignity. And so in order to do so, we need to make sure that our principles are comprehensive, covering a wide variety of events, and paying attention to our local diversity. In terms of content and knowledge, this will be defining what every student will be able to know and do, prioritizing our 4 disciplines that are already in the Connecticut frameworks: the history, civics, economics, and geography. We want to ensure, again, that piece of civic engagement that comes from democratic values and agency being promoted. We need to make sure that this content and knowledge is promoting multiple lenses, multicultural, multinational, and then again, connecting back to the rich, diverse, and complex history of the United States. And as we were just discussing, we need to ensure that while we're focusing on these key bits of content, knowledge, and skills, that we are again providing flexibility for districts to include their own local connections for content. And finally, within the skills section of our guiding principles, you can see that we again are reiterating history, economics, geography, and civics. We want to make sure that we are emphasizing source literacy, especially with evaluating sources. Tony alluded to media literacy earlier in this presentation. And then again, as we were just communicating with Steve, informed action is going to be a priority within our guiding principles. And so as you go back into the main guiding principles document at your leisure, you can review a little bit more of these guiding principles. I can reiterate to everybody that this was quite a process to take examples from Washington, D.C., from Massachusetts, and from just all the feedback that we received from steering committees and focus groups. And we hope that this document that we've produced really helps set the tone for what we're expecting in these standards. Tony shared with you earlier the themes that are evident throughout this guiding principle document, and that will be another tool for us to use as writers to really assess our work and ensuring that we're upholding these principles. Okay, and so Allison, are you good to flip us back over?
There we go. I am. All right, if you could just continue sharing your screen, I'd be grateful. So we're just going to break out into some groups very quickly, and they'll be chosen at random. So they're not, you know, we put a lot of thought into it, but they will be at random. So per Jennifer's instructions, we'd like you to just be thinking about these questions, about the sort of the guiding principles, about the document that we just overviewed with you. And in our groups, we'd like you to discuss the challenges and the solutions that are noted on the Jamboard that Jennifer pointed out, and then prioritize those solutions to the top challenge for each principle set, so that we can sort of, as the standards, the team leaders, we can start to identify, you know, where we need to begin when we get to work in the coming probably days, actually. All right, and Tony, I think, has everything set up for the breakouts. Are we ready to head into those breakout rooms?
Yeah, I just want to be sure that you're looking for 7 to 8 participants per group. So 6 different groups is okay? Okay, cool. I'm going to open up the groups now.
Hey, Tony.
Yes.
Hey, Tony. Could I, Allison and Jennifer, could you just, I just want to make sure that this is correct, that you're not, that the document you just shared is a completed document. So you're not looking for suggestions for edits or changes to the principles, correct? But you're looking for how we might be using those and the challenges associated with using those. Is that correct?
Correct.
Thank you.
Thanks, Alan.
Okay, I'm going to open the rooms now. Does everyone have access to the? Okay, I see it right there. Okay, great.
In the chat, you'll see the links for both an elementary Jamboard and a secondary Jamboard. Okay, so we have everybody back together. Allison's going to walk us through a little bit of the feedback that we've received from you. I'm going to flip through so you can see the Jamboard. It's amazing. Thank you all for the contributions.
All right, so we talked at length about this, like the challenge that's gonna fall on the writing groups of over the next 5 to 10 years, especially as it relates to Principle 2, the skill component of things, right? We've seen since 2015 as educators, the skill set that students need in the social studies to be successful change significantly. And so we, you know, when troubleshooting and trying to figure out, okay, what do we need to be aware of in writing teams? It's how do we create elements of a document that will be able to evolve along with the students over the next 8, 9, or 10 years until, you know, we possibly have the opportunity to rewrite again, right? Or innovate again. So the skill component came up like amongst the entire group in one way or another. The other challenge, it seems, for us is going to be how to, we're not writing curriculum, right? But how much content is too much content when we're incorporating it into the new document? How much is not enough, right? And how can we be faithful to some of the themes that we discussed as part of our norms section earlier on today? How can we be faithful to those themes if we have no content to use as examples within the documents? What's that going to look like? Right. Then also the vertical alignment, the topic of vertical alignment came up. And one of the challenges we'd like to kind of get ahead of, would seem, is that in working in small groups, that's great, but it can be isolating, especially as far as vertical alignment is concerned. And so a fair amount of the feedback was centered on, well, what are ways that we can kind of collaborate with the other teams efficiently, because we are on a deadline, to just check in now and again and see, okay, what's the K-2 team doing if I'm somebody who's maybe in the middle school team, right? And doing, you know, the work of US grade 8. Or whatever that might be. So opportunities to check in as a big group, but also have the independence to work as smaller groups came up as well. Those were the big themes that we established in the limited time we had. So Jennifer, I'm going to kick it back to you, but if anybody has anything they'd like to say that I missed, please feel free to jump in.
Thanks, Allison. I think one of the biggest challenges that we will have with our challenges, we can all foresee some really great possible solutions, but sometimes solutions on paper don't translate as easily into our practice. And so I think that's where I want everybody to know that as we are beginning the process of working within our smaller groups on the various courses and grade levels, the project associates, Alan, Steve, and Tony, we are all going to be in constant communication and sharing ideas and looking for those common threads that are occurring, whether it is challenges, solutions that somebody comes up with, because from the start, we really want this document to be cohesive. We want it to be consistent throughout our K-12, and we need to keep the lines of communication open. So while we will be working in smaller groups, we want everybody to know that we really will not be operating as silos. So, but again, thank you. Certainly feel free to go back into those guiding principles at your leisure if you so desire. We're going to keep these 2 Jamboards up as open and editable so that the people who are not present today can watch the recording and also chime in. And as you're looking at what people have put down on these sticky notes, you can click on somebody's sticky note and edit with a possible solution if something comes to your mind. So please feel free to do so. And with